Sometimes we don't need more information. We simply need a different perspective and a different way of relating to our experiences, basically. So today I'm going to share a reflective practice that you can use with tarot cards, oracle cards, imagery cards, lots of different types of decks. I'm going to be going through using two decks. One is my whole health card deck that is available on Etsy, and the other one I'm going to be using a tarot deck. And then also I just want to shout out my book, Card Play, which is a creative process for discovery through image and metaphor. This is available on Amazon in a softcover book. It has lots of different types of practices for using imagery cards like tarot, oracle, and even charms. And also I have a section specifically on dramatic resonances. I have some videos on dramatic resonances, but those are ways to kind of enter and explore the imagery on a tarot card, for example, in a way that is more personal and more present for you in that moment. So definitely go ahead and check out Card Play on Amazon. But in any case, I'm going to be, and I also just wanted to show you, like, I really love using paint chips in my creative processes, and I just got these two recently that I think are super magical, and I just wanted to briefly share them. Merlin's Robes and Golden Spell. So maybe I'll do another video talking more specifically about paint chips, because these are just a really accessible tool that can be really powerful, and they're just available, you know, at your local like hardware type of store. Okay, anyway. So the purpose of this practice is it's not about prediction. Like, none of my practices are about prediction or divination. It's not about trying to find, you know, the correct or guidebook meaning for the card. It's really about using the cards largely for reflection and our imagination. And many of my practices are very fluid in the sense that they can be integrated and applied to lots of different types of situations. So you can certainly, you know, if you're in like a reflective journaling mood, you can do this practice, you know, with your life as a whole. But sometimes it can be really helpful to bring up a specific situation or a question or a transition, a decision, relationship, project, or just like a specific area of your life into focus, and like come, you know, to the cards or to this practice kind of like with that in mind, right? So maybe it is about exploring and getting some more inner clarity around a decision that you're trying to make, or some type of a project or a relationship, a transition, like some kind of a life transition, right? Where there really isn't like a clear path or one way to approach it. Or just kind of like some situation that like keeps coming up in your mind or in your life that you want to kind of explore in a deeper way. And so I'll start with the tarot cards. I'm going to set these away. And, you know, there are so many different ways to choose cards. Some people prefer to select them intentionally, where they're kind of like literally going through the deck and choosing an image that just like catches their attention in some way, or draws them in, sparks curiosity, or even is very like, they really don't like it, they're very resistant to it, because that experience or that reaction to a card can also hold a lot of really meaningful information. Or they kind of like specifically have the cards face up and just kind of go through and, you know, choose a card that really seems to be calling them or pulling them, you know, for really any reason, and then they go with that. So other people, you know, prefer to choose cards randomly and just kind of like work with whatever appears. I think of this more as an improvisational method. And, you know, neither is really better than the other. They're just really about creating like different types of experiences. And whichever one is chosen is really going to ultimately invite a different type of reflection through the practice. So, you know, experiment and see what happens. For this one, I'm going to do a more intentional or what I think of as like an intuitive pull. And so this practice works with two questions. Okay, and I'm going to go through them one after the other, and then there are some deepening prompts. So the first question that you would sit with is, what in your life, or what in this particular situation or what situation feels complete, outdated, or less relevant right now. What feels complete, outdated, or less relevant right now, just in your life as a whole, or as related to whatever specific situation or life area that you're intentionally working on. So just kind of letting that question land, and then choosing one or more cards. So like I said, I'm just demonstrating this. So I'm just going to choose this one. It's so funny, this one just was the next one that I pulled, because I use this card in one of my, as one of my demonstration cards with card play, when I talk about card play. But in any case, or maybe you have 2 cards. So maybe you have 2 cards that you're working with, right? You can really choose as many as you want. But for this purposes of this video, I'm just going to choose 1 card per question. So once you get your card, the idea is to just kind of sit with the imagery and let it land, and really absorbing the image on many levels, right? So noticing what stands out to you, what catches your attention, any associations that come up for you, something that maybe surprises you, and really kind of allowing the card to become more of a mirror of something rather than some kind of a message, right? So you can journal your associations, reflect silently, or kind of simply notice what's coming up for you in your embodied physical experience, with the card. And again, a really great way to explore imagery on cards is with dramatic resonances. Like I mentioned, I have videos on dramatic resonances. I talk about dramatic resonances in my card play book. So if I was going through this my own self, I might pick 1 or 2 dramatic resonances and kind of think about and journal and maybe free associate more. But one thing that I, in particular with this card, because I've talked about it so much in other contexts, to me, this there's this idea of boundaries, right? Like a house as representing boundaries. So I think this is a really interesting, personally, card to explore from the perspective of boundaries. Okay. Among other things, right? There's nature and the wilderness and all that kind of stuff. But in any case, so that's this 1 card, okay? So then the next question, so that's question 1. And then the next question is, what would support, strengthen, or nourish me right now as I move forward? So the second question is, what would support, strengthen, or nourish me right now as I move forward? And you can choose a card the same way that you chose the first card. You might choose it differently. But in any case, I'll just pull this one. Once you choose that card, or once you get that image, again, spend some time with it. Again, noticing qualities or symbols, relationships, or possibilities that kind of emerge from your exploration of the image. So thinking about, maybe what feels really supportive about the image, what feels inviting, what might be worth paying attention. And then if you want to go further and explore things a little bit more, I have a couple extra deepening questions that can be used here. And one of those is maybe again, this is all depending on the context that you're exploring, is what makes this shift difficult, or what makes this experience or this situation or whatever it is difficult. And then again, choosing another card and again, noticing what the imagery evokes. And then I always like to, well, not always, but sometimes it's helpful to just go through the exploration and leave it at that. And sometimes it's helpful, I find it helpful to also have a practice or some kind of a takeaway for moving forward. And that's where I like to use a type of a card that's a little bit more action oriented. So there are lots of different types of card decks like that. And of course, my whole health card deck is one of those, where there are different categories of cards, and so lots of different practices in different realms of being. And so the second deepening question is what might help me move forward. And so for this one, I'm gonna choose randomly. I mean, all the cards on my deck have different backs. So, but I'm not looking at it. I don't always know like which back corresponds to which. Oh, this is just my little explanation on how to use the cards. But in any case, I'm gonna choose one randomly of what might help me move forward. And I chose this photo that I took of Half Dome in Yosemite. And so particularly with something like the Whole Health card deck, it might be relating to this image on the back of the card, or maybe it's the practice itself. So this practice is restorative activities. Make a list of activities, people, and places that restore you and or fill your life with meaning and purpose. Engage, do that activity, go to that place, connect with that person, play and daydream, let your mind wander. So something like this practice has a lot of layers to it. And if I was actually, going through this process and using this as kind of like my next step to help me move forward, I could, I might, depending on what I had capacity to do, I might just go ahead and make that list. If I wanted to take it a step further, I might do that engage part of actually like doing something off my list. Or I might do something a little bit more unstructured, like I might play and daydream, whatever that is for me, or just let my mind wander, which is very, letting my mind wander might be very low effort, but it is my next step. It would be my takeaway based on my exploration of this situation. But regardless of whatever you choose, there's no need to force a conclusion. There's no need to find meaning if there really isn't none. And I always think of that as like this meta process for something like this. Is just because you go through a practice like this doesn't mean you have to accept the, what's coming up, right? You might reject a certain card that you drew or a certain piece of information or exploration because it really just doesn't have meaning for you. And you're the ultimate decider of that, right? So, whether you decide to do some of the optional deepening prompts, whether you decide to do some kind of a more takeaway piece, the idea is really, or the invitation is to see if you can leave with, a few questions or images or even just ideas that feel very alive for you in some way, right? And just kind of taking away that idea or that way of thinking that sometimes a shift begins not because we've solved a problem, but we've started to see it from a different angle. So I hope this practice was helpful for you. Please be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel and like my video for more creative ways for self-exploration and personal growth.